Okay, let's continue with the scene management part 2. This is where we left off. Now, we say that actually I'm going to move the player a little bit to the right so it's closer. I'm going to save it. I have opened at scene 1, but I'm going to play scene 2 again here. This is how the level looks like, and if we go to the mono develop, what we can now type is use the scene manager class. Now I don't know why, but usually if you use namespaces, for example like Unity engine, you can type game object and you can type directly, but for scene, oh, it works. Okay, now it's using the Unity engine namespace, so you have to use that, but that's obvious, I guess. Scene management, that actually that's a namespace that I have used. So yeah, at the moment, at least for me, I can't use the scene management directly, but I have to use Unity engine that scene management. Now if you don't know about namespaces, you're using them because this is how you get access to the objects and properties from the Unity engine. So if I comment that out, you can see that I can't use any of the Unity engine stuff. So if you want, for example, to write something without using Unity engine, you have to type Unity engine that mono behavior and type everywhere that you want to use, for example, a game object. You can't use it. You have to use Unity engine that game object and so on. This is why you use namespaces. And usually the scene management should work like this, but it's not at the moment. I guess they will fix that. So for now you have to type Unity engine that scene management that scene manager, and this is where you get all of the functions that you can use. So let's type load scene. When you open the brace, you have four options. Type the name of the scene like I have described it in the previous video. So you can use level 1 underscore part underscore 02 and so on, but since I have only 2 scenes, I'm going to use only the level number. So I need scene number 1, sorry, and that's it. Let's see what will happen now. Let's save, go to level 1. So this is our first level where we start the game, and let's start moving to the right. And when we enter the trigger, you see that scene 2 gets loaded. Now the problem is that we're going to scene 2 and scene 1 gets destroyed, and we can't continue obviously the game. So instead of loading scene, just loading scene, we have to type 1, and then we have to type comma and use load scene mode. So Unity engine that scene management that load scene mode, and say to additive. This is how you load the next scene into the current scene. So the both scenes will become into one level. So when we start moving now and we hit trigger, you can see that the next scene gets loaded, and you can see that they are both here now. So we can continue into scene 2. Now there is a small problem here. If you use this method and your second scene is bigger and needs some time to get loaded, you will get a small freeze of the game, because Unity, or actually the game engine, have to load the next scene. So instead of doing that, you're going to say load scene async, which is load the scene asynchronously in the background, which means that it starts loading the scene slowly while keeping free memory for the game to be played, and the player won't notice how the scene is getting loaded. So when we write this, we are going to say scene level 1, and we're going to say load scene mode that additive, like I explained. This is how it loads the scene additively into the current scene. So now when we play and when we go here, you can see that the next scene gets loaded and we don't see absolutely any freezing of the game or something like that, and you can continue. And right about now, if I am able to jump this part, I'm going to move this slightly to the left so I can jump them easier and safe. Now let's say that I will open scene 1 and I will drag scene 2 here. Let's say that in scene 2 we want to actually, you know what, I forgot something. Instead of using scene 1, this is why we made scene to load integer, so let's use that. And now you can use these triggers all over the scene. You can make it prefab, for example, and let's actually make it prefab. We're going to make it a prefab, and now you can just add it to another scene and so on, and just change the number of the level. If you want to use a string, just make that a string and type the name of the level that you want to load. We're going to make a new trigger, which will be here, triggers in scene 2, and we're going to add another empty game object and name it unload scene. We will position that right about here. We're going to add the physics box collider. Let's make it like this, and taller like this. Okay, and let's make that prefab as well. So we have unload scene. In the scripts we can select the unload scene and place it on that unload scene trigger. And now we can open model, open the unload scene script, and again we're going to use public integer unload scene, which will be the number of the scene that we want to unload. And again you can use string here as well. Let's say void on trigger enter collider other, and we'll say if other that tag equals player. Let's say Unity engine that scene management, the scene manager unload scene, and this is how again we type unload scene. Unload scene is the variable that we create here. Now if we select that game object, let me select the prefab and add the label to it so I can select it easier. We want to unload scene 0. Let's apply. There is one problem now, and I'm going to show you what. I suppose that's something like a bug, but I guess Unity will fix that. Usually Unity should give us an error, because if we try to unload scene 0, let's see what will happen actually. Let's play the scene. Actually not that scene, but let's go to scene 1, scene 2, everything is here. Okay, let's go to scene 1 and hit play. Let's start moving, and scene 2 gets loaded. Let's jump, and when we trigger here, yeah, I didn't make it a trigger, so sorry about that. Select the prefab, make it a trigger, save. Actually, no need to save, but anyway. And let's do it again. Scene2 gets loaded, and we go here. I'm going to select so we can see where we enter, and Unity freeze. So you have to be careful with that, because if you have something unsaved, Unity freezes and there is nothing you can do about that. So I have to terminate it. Okay, I have relaunched Unity, and now this is something I haven't tested before, so we're going to play with it. Now, let's think about why Unity is freezing. For me, it's because the player is still in scene 1, and when you want your player from scene 1 to trigger something in scene 2, it can't be unloaded because it's actually triggering, and this is why probably Unity is freezing, and it should give us an error, for example, something like that. So let's see what actually we can do about this. Let's see here. You have move game object to scene, which is cool. We have set active scene, which is cool as well. So I suppose we have to do this before we actually unload the scene. So let's see what in Mono develop. Let's open the script for unload scene, and here we're going to say private void unload scene. So here we're going to remove this and say unload scene. Now here we're going to say game object player go equals game object that find game object not objects, find game object with tag. That is the name of the tag player. We want to get the camera. Actually, we want to get the camera as game object. Will be equal to camera that main that game object. Let's try to move this object to scene. Move a game object from its current scene to a new scene. It's required that the game object is at the root of its current scene. So that game object we're moving have to be at the root, so no inside folders. But I suppose that there's a workaround for that as well. So let's type Unity engine that scene management that scene manager. Yeah, if I can type that move game object to scene. Now game object, move a game object from its current scene to a new scene. It's required that the game object blah blah blah. So let's move player go to Unity engine scene management that scene. Okay, let's suppose here we have to add it as a scene, but the problem is that we can't add a number, so we have to use something from here. Get active scene, get all scenes. We have all these. Get scene by name. So we want to get the, for example, scene by name. We can have scene count. This will tell you how much scenes you have, the total number of scenes, the number of scenes in build settings. So this will tell you the number of scenes in build settings. Get the active scene, get all the scenes, and get the scene at index in the scene manager list of added scenes. So let's try the get scene at to see what will happen. Now we're going to comment that out and say get scene, and here we're going to say void get scene, and let's say unity engine that scene management that scene manager. I'm going to copy that out. Get scene at 1. We want to get the second scene, and we're going to debug that log, that thing. Save. Go to Unity. We have an error, which is cool, which is totally cool, and we don't know why. We know why, because we're using this. Okay, let's remove it. No, now when we come here, and let me hit the play mode and move that player here. So when we trigger that, we get that scene. So we want to say the scene that name. Let's see what name it's going to debug for scene 1. Yeah, it's debugging part 2. So this is our actual scene at index 1. This is our second scene. So what are we going to do? We're going to say here scene. So we have to type unity engine that scene management that scene, and this is how we define actually the scene variable, and we're going to name it scene to move, and it will be equal to unity engine that scene management that scene manager that get scene at, and we'll type 1 here. If you want, again, if you want with the name, actually no, you can't. You have another method, another class or function, which is get scene by name. This will return the scene by its name. So this is how we get the second scene, and we assign it into scene to move. So now if we say unity engine that scene management that scene manager move game object to scene, and we're going to say which game object, player game object, and the scene, which is scene to move. And why it doesn't give me to do that? Because it's not scene to move. Yeah, okay, let's hit save, and let's see. Remove this, use the unload scene, and let's see what will happen with the player. Save, because you don't know what might happen. This is our player, and it's currently in scene 1. So let's open scene 1 only, and hit play. Let's start moving. Let me select the player. Scene 2 gets loaded. Let me open them. This is our player. It's currently in scene 1. And let's go and trigger, and the player moves to scene 2. So the player now is no longer part of scene 1. Okay, this is great. Now let's do the same. Let me copy that, paste it here, and say camera game object. Let's see if the camera will continue to follow the player when we move the camera and the player. So I'm going to actually here select the player, move it here. Did I? Actually I have triggered it accidentally. Let me do it again. Let me pause, move the player here, and now in level 1 I'm going to select the camera and the player, and we're going to trigger, and you see both have been moved to scene 2. So let's continue by trying to unload scene 1 now.